What is up, everybody? Welcome into Shout, a Buffalo football podcast. Don't worry. It only took me about 5 minutes to get down to the studio with my stupid sprained ankle that, Ryan, I guess that's where we got to start. Just trying to play a little basketball. I know I'm 43 years old. Didn't go well Wednesday morning. Came down on the right ankle. Pretty bad. Thought it might be broken. Ends up being just a severe strain. It has been a challenging, what do we got here? 36 hours here. My wife is a saint. Let's just say that.
Is it true that Dom Tibbetts crossed you up and that's how the injury occurred?
That's actually inaccurate. And I actually heard, in the media room today, just Dom talking about the work that he was getting before the injury and the fact that they were able to go down to 3 versus 3 after I left. He was excited about that, but that's neither here nor there. Aside that point, I will say one of the highlights, I wasn't able to get down to the facility on Wednesday. I went down today and I'm walking in after the Bills finished practice, and I'm walking by the defensive backs who are doing look like they were doing like a turnover drill at the end of practice. Everybody else kind of gone into the locker room. All of a sudden I hear from a distance, Matt. Oh man, Matt, you got the Tre'Davious White Achilles injury going on right now. And I literally just started cracking up, like laughing. Tre'Davious White is 1 in a million, man. It was super funny. He came over and dapped me up. But yeah, it's been crazy. Got the shout out from Sean McDermott on the press conference yesterday. I'm glad it's not broken though. Like I know some people say like, oh, sometimes maybe you'd rather have it be broken. I just didn't want to go through all that, because if it was broken the way that I came down on the side, I think it would have been really, really bad. So I think I avoided anything crazy.
Well, that's good. I'm glad it's you avoided that, and obviously a little bit of a long road ahead, but in a few weeks you'll be good as new.
Oh, and also big fans of the podcast. My nurse Nate at Excelsior Orthopedic, and then the boot fitting gentleman Rich, big fan. I want to shout both those guys out because they took care of me there. If you ever have any problems, I know they're not a sponsor, but head over to Excelsior because they'll get you taken care of. They were a huge fan. I think Rich was like, he was, I think, a little bit more of a Ryan Talbot fan. And, listen, nobody's perfect, Ryan, but at the end of the day, I told them we still appreciate. No, I'm just kidding. I'd be a bigger Ryan Talbot fan too.
If I ever get an injury, I'm heading to Excelsior. That's all I know.
All right, let's get in some Bills talk here. The Bills sitting here at 4-2. Preparations have been made. Last day of practice tomorrow. We will get into kind of what this thing looks like inside the building. I think one of my big takeaways, Ryan, just being down there today, is there's an energy about this team that I don't necessarily think that you'd expect walking into a practice for a 4-2 team riding a 2-game losing streak, with the way it's felt like the world has been falling. The sky has been falling, around the Bills Mafia world. And, hearing from McDermott and Allen this week to set the stage, it's like, all right, bye week's going on. You get a call from grandma if you're Josh Allen telling you that you need to smile more. And I think there's actually something to that. Like if you think about some of the times over the last couple of years where the Bills have kind of been in a rut, right? I think some of that comes down to Josh Allen needing to kind of set that standard and that energy level, especially on offense. We were in Atlanta watching that game. It looked like he was like a deer in the headlights. And I remember a couple of years ago, it might've been last year, the year before that. I can't remember when it was. Whenever it was the low positive or high negative or whatever the commentary was around how he was trying to change his approach to games, there was an NFL film skit that came out, or video that came out after a game, and it was him on the sideline saying, I feel like I'm back. And sometimes I think even as these high-level competitors, you have to almost be shaken back into what you do so well, because it's been a down couple of weeks for Josh Allen. So I think just starting on that note to start the week, and Sean McDermott saying he had to get out of the house to get back to the building to watch more film to figure this thing out, not to mention the potential reinforcements, it feels like the Bills are kind of there seems to be a nice response permeating right now inside the building.
Yeah, and 2 back-to-back losses leave a bad taste in your mouth when you have a week off after that. Josh Allen having the call from grandma, I'm sure helps him put things in perspective in terms of how he needs to be on the sidelines, just in general, not getting too high or too low, because you're right. He did look like a deer in headlights at times. He looked very frustrated at times in that game, and rightfully so. It was not a good performance for the offense as a whole. So, that'll be important. There are some reinforcements along the way or coming along the way, but man, that injury report is still pretty long and pretty significant at this time.
I think the first things first is, and we can start anywhere, and I want to get into these guys that are coming back this week. But before we get there, like, how concerned are you about Josh Palmer not being available in the passing game? Because I think the Bills, I know the Carolina Panthers are good against the run, but I still think the Bills are going to look to get their run game going. But when they do decide to pass, and you think about the different number of sets that they can have out there with the receivers, I know they could probably lean back a little bit in a 13, 12 personnel, do some 22, maybe some different fun variations of that. But if Palmer can't go, which it's trending in that direction, and Sean McDermott didn't even really rule out injured reserve for him or Daquan Jones, how big of a potential loss is that, not just for Carolina, but if you look ahead on the horizon, the Kansas City Chiefs coming up in a week?
It's a big loss, but at the same time, the Bills hadn't necessarily been utilizing Palmer the right way, in my opinion, in terms of getting him the proper amount of reps and targets. So from that perspective, it's kind of just the status quo. It's more of the same. I felt like that Atlanta game was going to be his coming out party with the Bills, making a lot of big plays in that game early, and then obviously the injury occurs. But before that, he had a few nice moments into the Baltimore game, but then he just kind of disappeared because of the way that they were using him. So it is a loss, because I do think he is one of their best receivers. But at the same time, it's not like the Bills have been sitting there utilizing him the way that I think they should have been all along.
Tom Beebs says, show the ankle. You don't want to see the picture of the ankle, man. And by the way, it's at the point now where it's all like bruised over now. Like, it's like 24 hours later and it's kind of starting to bruise. So we'll figure out where that goes. I think I'm going to be in the clear though, because I think I'll be even good to go for this weekend traveling to Carolina. Like, I'm able to kind of like move it in every direction. Feels really good in the boot. I'm hoping that even with the crutches, we'll get to a really good place Saturday, Sunday. Be good on the road. So we'll be all good, Tom. Thank you for your appreciation. And by the way, you can see the picture. My wife lovingly posted it on Facebook 2 days ago. All right. So yesterday, let's get to the defensive lineman, because I'm writing about that for Syracuse.com, NewYorkUpstate.com right now. That story will drop a little bit later tonight after the show ends. And, I think this is one of the most interesting storylines of the first 6 weeks, because it is so rare. Even Sean mentioned it yesterday, to have two premier free agents that you sign in the offseason have to kind of sit on the sidelines for 6 weeks and then inject them both into the defense or whatever side of the ball, like almost at the midway point of the season. It's like, it's kind of this built-in reinforcements for a defense that, Ryan, has been bad. I mean, this is the worst run defense in the NFL, ranked 32nd in DVOA defense, total defense, 26th out of 32 teams. It's gone about as bad as you can expect. I think, like we talked about, like the Joe Brady, Bobby Babich hot seat, we can have that conversation, but I do think this has been a unit that's underperformed. At the same time, though, it's hard to truly get a picture of what this thing's going to look like without two very important pieces that they added. Larry Ogunjobi, he's been around the league for a long time, went to a Super Bowl with Cincinnati a couple years ago, had his best season for the Cincinnati Bengals. This is his 9th NFL season. He brings over 100 starts in the NFL to this defense. And then you talk about Michael Hoecht, who, to me, the kind of versatile piece, energizer. Like, when you're talking about the identity of this defense, right? Like, over the years, there's been so many different players that have like set the identity, right? Like, for a lot of years there, I think Poyer and Hyde were that, the professionalism, the way they disguise things, the energy that Poyer brought at times. Lorenzo Alexander at one point, Kyle Williams at one point. To me, Michael Hoecht could be kind of like the energizer of this defense to help them find their identity. He's planning to bring juice. He's planning to bring energy. And he said today that he was clocked at practice going 19 miles per hour. So he feels like he's game ready to go. I don't want to overhype these additions back into the defense too much, but I really think it's not only about these two individual players, but what it means for the whole on this defense.
Yeah, I'll hype him up if you don't want to. I think Michael Hoecht is going to be a massive addition for this defense. I watched him all training camp. I was more than impressed. He was a guy that seemed to stand out every day that I was there, made a lot of really good plays. You've seen this defense at times try different things, dropping AJ Epinesa, Javon Solomon back into coverage. Those are, that's the role that they want Hoecht to be able to do at times, because he is such a good athlete. You can play him off the edge. He's good against the run. He can get after the quarterback. And, oh, by the way, on obvious passing downs, if you want, you can kick him on the inside as well next to Ed Oliver. So I am very excited about the addition of Hoecht to this defense and what it means and how it pushes everyone down a spot in the defensive end room, obviously minus, Bosa, and Rousseau is going to still have a big role, but it moves Javon Solomon down into maybe just a special teams role, or maybe he's not even getting a game day jersey. I think he still will. It'll probably be Landon Jackson is the odd man out in that room, but I'm excited about that. Larry Ogunjobi, you heard from Mitch Morse earlier this week about how Ogunjobi was one of the toughest players for him to go against in his NFL career. And that might have been a few years ago. It might have been when Ogunjobi was like truly in his prime, but I still think he's coming back at a time when the Bills really need him. They just had the injury to Daquan Jones, and I love everything that Deion Walker has done for this unit early in his career. But it's good to add another veteran into the mix that can come in and take some of that workload off from the rookie. Keep Walker fresh. Let him learn from Ogunjobi and obviously from Oliver as well. But give them more of a true rotation, because we know how much Sean McDermott loves rotating his defensive tackles and defensive ends.
I mean, you have Jordan Phillips and Deion Walker that could kind of fill in right now for Daquan Jones as you allow Larry Ogunjobi to really settle into the role that they brought him here to fill. And that is the primary backup to Ed Oliver, which allows you to keep that rotation as fresh as possible when you're trying to create chaos for the opposing team's quarterback. And I know it might be Andy Dalton this week. We'll see what happens with Bryce Young. Either way, I feel like the Bills are going to be able to generate quite a bit of chaos for whoever's throwing back there. I know this is an offensive line that's been pretty good, top 10-ish in pass protection across all three metrics. There's those, I've talked about this on the show before. There's a graph that goes around every week where they take the ESPN, the Sports Information Solution, and I believe maybe PFF, and they put those scores together and then they rank offensive lines in terms of pass blocking. And the Bills still remain as a top 5 pass blocking unit in the league after 7 weeks. The Panthers are like borderline top 10. They're either like at 10 or 11 or 12, wherever they're at. They've done a good job. But against this defense, one of the underappreciated parts of this early season run of the defense, because it's been so bad against the run and at times against the pass, Drake London, that's part of it. Joey Bosa is number 7 in the league right now in pressure rate. AJ Epinesa is number 12. And you're throwing Michael Hoecht into this mix. Honestly, we could be talking about at the end of the season, maybe 3 Bills edge rushers in the top 20 for pressure rate in the NFL if Greg Rousseau finds his ability to really start winning on the outside, which I think a lot of people expected him to do. I mean, I thought his pressure rate last year for most of the year was pretty impressive. Now you're starting to have a collection of players at the front line that I think the Bills can lean on to maybe, fix some of these problems. And I got to read you this quote, actually. Let me pull it up. It's from Michael Hoecht today. And because I was asking him, like, you were with the Rams last year when they were replacing Aaron Donald and coming out of the gates, 160 plus to the Detroit Lions on the ground and then 220 to the Arizona Cardinals. And they had to completely like re-envision who they were. And so there was a lot of soul searching, a lot of back to fundamentals. And he said, listen, scheme is great. I'll give you the exact quote. Defensive football, it's juice and energy. You can fix all the scheme that you want, but at the end of the day, if you run through somebody's face and blow something up, all the scheme that matters, all the scheme in the world is not going to fix that. And so I think it's just about what you want to be when you're out there, setting that tone, that nasty, energetic tone. And if he could bring an element to this game, not only this Sunday, but then, at home against the Kansas City Chiefs in a week and a half, that's massive.
Yeah, bringing the nasty. We talked about that. Do the Bills have enough players like that? We heard from Sean McDermott saying at some point your guys just have to win. They have to be able to win their one-on-one matchups. And I think Hoyt's going to bring a lot of the energy and juice to this team. And that's contagious, Matt. Once you see someone starting to do that, it does up the level of the players around you. So I do feel like that's going to be a really sneaky addition for this defense. The Bills, in terms of the defense as a whole, they have not made a lot of plays on the football this year. And I think as long as the pressure up front continues to trend in the right direction, that will eventually lead to good things on the back end.
If you want to lead to good things this weekend, and maybe you're hosting a party for all the football action on Sunday, or maybe some college football on Saturday, or just hosting a regular party, head over to Tops Friendly Markets. There's no better time to rush into the Tops Red Zone than right now. You can win the GOAT, the greatest of all tailgates, in the Tops Red Zone raffle. Shop from over 25 fan favorite brands like Coca-Cola, Heinz, King's Hawaiian, Kraft, Pepsi, and so many more. When you do, you're entered to win the ultimate tailgate package: Samsung Outdoor TV, Traeger Grill, Oni Pizza Oven, Igloo Cool Tunes Cooler, a $500 chef experience, and so much more. All you have to do is shop at Tops and head over to topsmarkets.com/redzone to find out more. All right, Ryan, we talked about the two defensive linemen the Bills could be adding. Maxwell Hairston, where are we at with the return of the rookie cornerback? Because I think right now, if you had asked me pre this week, like going into practice on Wednesday, what would it look like with Maxwell Hairston out on the field? I would have said I think they'd be ramping him up slowly. I think that it's like your first week at practice. I know he's limited, but maybe like, pushing him into the shallow end of the pool. I mean, I know it's just individual drills that we get to see when he's out there, but he is absolutely flying around, change of direction, all the things that you'd worry about coming off of a knee injury. I think he's answered a lot of those early questions. Is it out of the realm of possibility that he can be active for Sunday? Or are you still, want to see more, let him get a couple more practices under his belt? And even if it's not this weekend, I really think Kansas City, maybe that being the game that he can return for, is definitely very much in play.
Yeah, I think Kansas City might be more realistic. All the videos, though, he is flying around. He's running really well. And the one thing I'll say is the Bills took a very cautious approach with Max Hairston in this injury, and that's the right approach to take. They called it week to week at the initial time of the injury. We know how much time he has missed since then, and he's worn the brace, but I feel like they've given it enough time to really get back to as close, if not to 100% that it can be. And, I would love to have him out there on Sunday, but you want to get him some more practice reps, the game speed. As much speed as he brings to the table, game speed is a whole different animal. So you don't want to throw him out there too quickly necessarily. No knock on Andy Dalton, because Dalton can still sling the football if that's who they see on Sunday. I think the Bills can get by this week without Max Hairston, but I would love to have him on the field against Kansas City. Something with that they have no tape on, something that they, aren't going to necessarily be prepared for, and just throw him into the deep end, throw him into the fire and say, hey, kid, this is a team that we might see in the playoffs. We've seen them many times. Let's see what you can do in your first action against them and how much better you can get over the course of the regular season in the event that maybe we play him again come playoff time.
The Hairston watch is going to be really interesting over the course of the next couple of days to see if they can't get him back. But I think something that's equally interesting is what's going on in the Bills safety room right now. And I think I have a stat for you, and it's the team advanced defense. If you go search that over on Pro Football Reference, you can pull up missed tackles in the NFL. Okay. And it'll rank teams from 1 to 31. The worst team in the league through 7 weeks is the Cincinnati Bengals. And remember, the Bills have only played 6 games. Bengals have played 7. 81 missed tackles. Okay. So they are the worst team in the league by a long margin. Where do you think the Bills sit on this list?
Probably like 3.
Like third worst?
Yeah.
No.
Oh.
The Bills actually have 34 missed tackles according to Pro Football Reference, which places them at 1, 2, 3. I guess it would be 4th. And there's only 6 teams that have more less missed tackles this season than the Bills, which
That
to
sounds
me,
wild.
that does sound wild, right? But then I started to think about it, right? And if you take Taylor Rapp, who has 8 missed tackles this season of the 34 that the Bills have, that is a huge, I'm not a math guy. That is a huge percentage.
About 1/4. It's about one. Yeah.
So you extrapolate that to, that number that you saw for the Cincinnati Bengals. And if the Bills had 11 Taylor Rapps, they would be in quite the same kind of situation. Now, something interesting happened earlier this week. You get to Wednesday and Taylor Rapp appears on the Bills injury report with a knee injury. And conveniently, Sean McDermott comes out and says this is something that he's been dealing with since training camp, which I don't disagree with. If you go back and look at the injury reports, I do believe that his name was mentioned as dealing with something in camp. And then I think he appeared briefly on an injury report during the season. I have to go back and look. It's neither here nor there. It feels convenient that now I feel like the noise at its loudest about him getting benched, that there is this natural avenue to sitting him down, whether it be for this week or whether it be for an extended period, and they're still doing this due diligence. They don't know about Jones and Palmer about injured reserve. When asked about Taylor Rapp, he said the Bills are still working through all that, how serious the injury is, how long is he going to be out for. So there's a couple things here. Number one, it gets you out of having to bench a veteran player that you brought back here on a 2-year contract. And it also clears the way for you to make a change at a position that arguably has been the worst. When you talk about a run defense that has been as bad as the Bills, taking out the worst offender in inability to tackle on the team, I think we can look for an uptick. Oh, by the way, just in time to play against Rico Dowdle, who has been one of the most impressive running back forces in the NFL. And I think it'll probably be Jordan Poyer.
Yeah, and I'm all in favor of Jordan Poyer at this point in time getting that play. Although I'll say Matt Bovee shared a good video yesterday, I believe it was, of Sean McDermott kind of coaching up Jordan Hancock after Rapp. And, that's what a head coach does. He works with all of his guys. But I do think it's interesting that he's really looking one-on-one at Hancock right now with everything we've learned about Taylor Rapp. And I do buy Rapp's injury, for the record. He had fallen off so much this year that just something didn't add up. And now that the injury comes into play, it makes a lot more sense. The missed tackles, the lack of the play on the football hasn't looked quite the same. So whatever it is, you're right. You're not having to bench the guy. You get Jordan Poyer out there, who gave that defense a spark against Atlanta. Whether, they played way better in the second half. It's no coincidence. He made some really good plays in that game. And now you can even start sprinkling Hancock in, letting him see what he can do. This has been what I have been preaching and not begging for, but almost begging for since the beginning of the season. Let your young guys play. Let them take their lumps in the regular season. So come playoff time, you can really count on them. And I'm not saying Jordan Hancock's going to be ready for a huge role come playoff time, but if you can start getting him some reps now behind Jordan Poyer, behind Cole Bishop, it's only going to help that safety room. And that safety room has been horrendous this season.
And the other issue is like the safety room is depleted by injury. I mean, you talk about Rapp not being available likely this weekend. DeMar Hamlin's on injured reserve. Beyond that, you have Bishop, Poyer, Hancock, and then probably Cam Lewis is somebody that you'd also have in the mix. I'll be interested to see what they do.
Sam Franklin too, who has
Sam Franklin as well. He could play some safety. You're right. That's another name to throw in there, and he's already on the active roster. I'll be interested to see what they do with that other roster spot, because on one hand, you could sign Jordan Poyer to the 53, right? And maybe that's what they're figuring out. How long is Rapp going to be out for? If he's going to be out for an extended period of time, you put him on injured reserve, and now you sign Poyer and you activate Maxwell Hairston, and boom, you're at your 53. If not, you might elect to keep Poyer on practice squad because nobody's banging down that door to sign Jordan Poyer. He hung out there as a free agent. Even if you have to elevate him 3 times, it is what it is. You can use that practice squad for what it is. And then maybe eventually you'll just have him back on the 53-man roster, which makes a ton of sense. I almost think that, you could keep DeMar Hamlin on IR all season or elect to bring him back release him once he's healthy enough and probably get him back to the practice squad as well. You can kind of do, play some roster gymnastics.
Yeah, they have the flexibility to do that. And like you said, some of these players, you feel like you could get on the practice squad and elevate and kind of work it that way. So that's one thing working in their favor. Obviously, the trade deadline is still a few weeks away. The Bills could work something out there. Not saying it's going to happen. The Bills might just stay with what they have, but it's going to be fascinating to see what happens over the next few weeks with the roster and then what could potentially happen at the trade deadline.
So one of our insiders, Ryan, asks, quick question, with Rapp potentially being sidelined for the foreseeable future and the questions with Bishop, could the Bills potentially see a trade for a safety? I'm listening to One Bills Live and reports are coming out that Minkah Fitzpatrick may be on the trade block. I know in-division trades are very rare, but is his contract one where he could be fit under the cap? And how high of a pick do you think a team would need to give up to acquire him? What are your thoughts on that, Ryan, as I look up his contract?
So let me just say, first of all, when it comes to in-division trades, I agree. They don't happen all the time. But if there is one team, well, two teams in the AFC that should be in full teardown mode, it's the Miami Dolphins and it's the New York Jets. So I'm not ruling out any veteran player being a possibility to be traded within the division. Now, they're not going to sit there, the Miami Dolphins, and trade Achane or Waddle to the Bills. That'd be crazy. Those are younger players in their primes. But a player like Fitzpatrick, yeah, that's possible. Miami's other safety is a possibility, who I really like in terms of his fit into this scheme as well. He was one of my 10 trade targets. Jeremy Chin's out there. There are a lot of players that you could potentially look at and try to fit them in. It all comes down to what Buffalo thinks about how they fit into their system, how much time they feel it would take for those players to get comfortable in the system versus what the Bills already have in Poyer and Hancock.
So the safety thing is, there's two things at work here. Number one, to your point, if you trade for a guy of like a Fitzpatrick type caliber player, I don't think you have any doubts with the Bills just turning over the position to him, seeing what it looks like, letting him kind of, but anybody that falls into like the tiers below, like I'd consider Rasul Douglas when the Bills traded for him. If you take Minkah Fitzpatrick where he's at, there's probably a tier below that, like really good starter. I think Rasul Douglas was that when the Bills traded for him a couple years ago. And I think it's safety. I'm a little bit less confident that Sean McDermott would throw somebody that doesn't know his defense and is as responsible for the communication pieces as he puts on his safeties, dating back to the start of training camp, just throwing them out there to see how it goes. So I think it would have to be a very specific player. To me, a Fitzpatrick trade makes a lot more sense to me than some of the other safety names that have been thrown around, just because of his experience, his ability likely to be able to pick it up on the fly. But it also comes down to, like, how does he fit? How do you project him to play with Cole Bishop? But it can't be worse than what Taylor Rapp gave you. So I think if a deal came up that said, okay, you could add a really good player and not have to give up a ton, I think you could probably get a Fitzpatrick for like a third round pick at this point, if they're looking to just accumulate draft capital. And then also on the other side of it, maybe Miami, whose season is shot, will pick up most of the tab for 2025. I think that's where you get really interested in it if you're Brandon Beane. But I'm still looking at some other really important positions to me. Like, I still think linebacker is sneaky a need because of the injury issues. Logan Wilson, who's out there, who's a free agent target. We talked about him on the show years ago when he was entering into potentially being a free agent there in Cincinnati. And then wide receiver. I'm staying on that train. I think adding another receiver, even if you don't go shoot for the stars with a Chris Olave type, there are guys out there that I think that can come in here and be a valuable depth piece, give you maybe even another skill set. I'm thinking of like a Rashid Shaheed or somebody in that realm, in that mold.
Yeah, and Shaheed makes sense. I mean, I've seen people floating Jerry Jeudy's name out there. Drop issues though galore. Talent's there.
He's got a big contract.
He does. 100% does. He is a player. I mentioned Ridley. He has a bigger contract as well. But I agree with you that linebacker might be a sneaky need over these other defensive positions, and hence why I put Logan Wilson in the article. Sure enough, today he asked for a trade out of Cincinnati. And it's funny, you mentioned Cincinnati's tackling woes. They bench him for a rookie. He wasn't really given a good explanation for it. And really, when you look at the data, he had their best tackle rate at the position in terms of missed tackles. He was their best linebacker, and yet he's the one that's kind of the odd man out. Does have a decent salary, but I'm sure something will get worked out with Cincinnati, another team where, they're trying to stay in the playoff hunt and in the picture, hence making a move for a Joe Flacco and then waiting until Joe Burrow gets back. But I still think that a player that you bench is going to be potentially available via trade.
Let me play one quick game before we get out of here. And we could probably save it for the show tomorrow, but let's just do it now.
Okay.
Bills lose this weekend. Give me the Monday morning headline.
Let's see. Man. Probably about something about keeping McDermott and Bean in Carolina. At least from the fan perspective, that's how they're going to feel. I don't know what the headline would be from the media perspective, but I'm not trying to knock Carolina. They're on a 3-game win streak. They are trending in the right direction as a franchise, but this is a game the Bills should not lose. Sean McDermott is undefeated after the bye. They've had an extra week to prepare for this game. I know the injury list is long. You still have Josh Allen. You still have talent on both sides of the ball. There is no excuse to lose this game.
To me, the big thing, too, on the road is cleaning up the sloppiness that we've seen over the last couple of games for the Bills, like the untimely holding penalties or pre-snap penalties that just are absolute drive killers. Like when you're in a funk like Joe Brady seemingly has been in the last 2 weeks, the thing that you have to first try to eliminate are the plays that kill the drives, because you need to keep sustaining these drives so you're ending with points instead of kicks. And so I think, or turnovers, which could be even worse. So I think, to me, the headline coming out of this weekend, if they lose, it could be potentially changing the conversation to, should the Bills be sellers at the deadline?
Ooh.
Because if they're sitting there at 4-3 with the Chiefs to come and the potential to drop to 4. Now, I think that I'm saying that as like a hyperbolic reaction, right, and there will be those hyperbolic reactions. I don't think you're necessarily going to get that on the Shout podcast, depending on how the game goes. But we're sitting here talking about being a buyer, and if you can't go on the road and beat the Carolina Panthers, and I know how much better they've been, I do think that the questions that have been percolating about this team and about the regime and about the direction, man, I think that the temperature is going to be at an all-time high over the last 5 years. But do either of us think that's going to happen? Tune in tomorrow when we preview the Panthers versus the Bills right here on Shout. Ryan Talbot, final word.
Final word, yeah. With these coming off the bye, one thing we'll talk about tomorrow, I wonder if we're going to see a little bit more man sprinkled in. We saw their success in the second half against Atlanta. I wonder if you're going to see a little bit more of that come in the first half, because that might be the answer for this team in terms of their defensive woes. The zone just is not working or working well enough.
We just have a new subscriber, and his name is Dick Trickle. Great name, great YouTube name. He said, "Hey, I'm the boot fitting guy. He is Rich, who put my boot on at Excelsior, and he said I'm also available to sub in on a pod if that ankle doesn't hold up." Thank you so much, my friend. Shout out to you once again. We really appreciate you. Thank you for everybody that watch. Hit that like and subscribe before you go. We'll be right back tomorrow after the Bills practice, so we can preview Bills versus Panthers, give you our predictions and all that fun stuff. Have a great Thursday, everybody. Enjoy Thursday Night Football. Take care.